Good afternoon, everybody.
Yes, good afternoon.
I am Nilesh Mandlecha. She is Pradnya Mandlecha. I am psychologist by profession and I have done my MBA in Human Resource Management. I conduct program for Indian Army, Indian Navy, Mumbai Police. I have conducted programs on more than 10 TV news channels. I have conducted programs for more than 75 companies. From last 15 years, I am visiting faculty for Management Institute. And from 15 years, I am practicing as a psychologist. Welcome for this talk on research methods in psychology. This is very important subject. Research, developing research perspective is very important. We will just try to understand how this subject is important. I will give you some Indian example. So we will start. I will hand over the mic to Pradnya. She will start the presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Yes, good afternoon, ma'am.
Before we begin that, about our topic research method in psychology. Now this is a scientific approach altogether. How one conduct research methods in psychology, or what are the scientific parameters or scientific criteria, or what are the steps involved, and what is the importance of research methods per se, a subject in psychology. Why and how, that we will try to get some information as we will move our slides. First slide is talking about research is a process where a new knowledge is discovered. Now this is something which is challenging to discover some or the other newness in as far as the knowledge is concerned, as far as the concept is concerned. To seek certain facts and answers to your questions. Many of the times, we get the questions and we do not have the available answer, or which you do not justify to our logic that what is the right answer for it. So research methodology helps us to find the answers to our questions. It helps to find the answers to our problem. Expands man's knowledge. It's not only it will be helpful for the entire humankind. It helps to expand the man's knowledge. Applied research improves human condition, and it is always driven by practical needs. So whatever the practical needs are there, I need to identify what is the practical problem, what are the need gaps, and how it is one can fit those problematic gaps. That helps research methods So what do you mean by these two words, re and search? Re means again and again and again, and search, examine, test, probe or track. Here that comes the perspective. It's from the scientific point of view also, something which you want to test it, you want to search it, that is able to do it again and again. It is not one time you have done it and you have proven. Okay, this has been found or this has been discovered. It is more important that something which is you require to do it again and again, and one can be redoable. Research is a systematic method. First and foremost, articulating the problem. What is the problem? Articulate the problem. Formulating a hypothesis. After fixing the problem, what is your hypothesis? Formulating a hypothesis. Hypothesis is nothing but it's a tentative statement. What you predict about the problem. Collecting the facts or data. Analyzing the facts and reaching certain conclusion. End result is discovery. That reaching something to the conclusion. Because of this has happened, and to happen this, what is responsible? This is responsible. To develop the relationship between two things is nothing but a research methodology. Criteria of good research, precisely pinpoint what is the purpose of the research, number one. Second, operational clarity towards objective. It is very important. How you are going to operate it and how you are going to reach to the end conclusion, what you are looking at. Procedure has to be precisely planned. Focused and appropriate description has to be present for further advancement by other researchers. Now this is something has been done by this one researcher. If suppose the same experiment somebody wants to do it, so it should be in a position to replicate the same for further any advancement. To maintain objectivity, research design has to be planned very, very carefully. The research report has to be transparent. The research report should be much possible frank enough to gauge effect on of the findings. Data analysis in the research report should be adequate to reveal the significance, and the method of analysis employed be appropriate, and validity and reliability of the data should be examined carefully.
We will see what is validity and reliability after some time.
Now certain objective of good research. Okay. To find out the truth, just for the sake of I want to say something, or this is applicable to my emotional reasoning, it cannot be the truth. Scientifically it has to be proven that too. So the objective of the good research is to find out truth, to discover answer to question through application of scientific purpose, to achieve new insight. Something if you are newly discovering, then it is new insight. To portray characteristics of a particular individual situation or group, it's a descriptive research. So where somewhere you are finding in total a new thing, so it becomes a explore conclusion, or the other thing you have described. So it is a descriptive research study. Some cases it is also been useful to diagnose, and some cases it is also been useful that like to test hypothesis of causal relationship between variables. What is this causal relationship would be the interesting part. We will take it up little later in more detail. So quality of the good research, just go through it. Systematic, empirical, valid, verifiable होना चाहिए, logical होना चाहिए. Okay, it has to have that develop the theories and principles के ऊपर based होना चाहिए, and research is most important, has to be a replicable.
This is replicable is very important here. Like many people, what happens, they claim that I got this particular experience, but that experience is a subjective experience.
Yes,
Yeah. If that cannot be replicable, then that is true for that person, that is the emotional reasoning of that person. We cannot take it as that standardization or conclusion.
Yes.
So replication is very important in research.
So we have seen it. It has to be systematic. Systematic research also invites creative thinking. Certainly avoids use of guessing and intuition for arriving at the conclusion. Okay, so straight away it rejects that intuition and emotional reasoning for it. It's empirical, that is, it's a hardcore evidences gathered from information collected from real life experiences and observation. And these real life experiences and observation, it cannot be the property of intellectual property of some community. It has to be a standardization, and it has to have that a validity to spread across globe. Good research is a valid and verifiable, involves precise observation and accurate description, selection of reliable and valid instruments to be used in the collection of data. Those whatever the instruments also they are using to measure certain attributes, that is also has to be globally accepted. Otherwise मैंने मेरा instrument बनाया, okay, which does not have any validity, which does not have any standardization, does not have a global acceptance, that will not do. It has to be logical, guided by the rules of reasoning and logical process of induction. Okay, that plays very important role. Logical reasoning makes research feasible and more meaningful in the context of the decision making.
So in induction, general to specific, and in deduction, specific to general. This is induction and deduction. These are two processes we follow in research.
Replicable, we have seen it. It should
Yeah,
be
replicable. I'll give you one example. Say for example, one person is telling, मैंने अंगूठी पहना और मुझे जॉब लग गया. Let's say example.
Yes.
So now one cannot be the sample. We are going to talk about sampling methods in research methodology. So it's important, it should be replicable, because now the person has already got the job. So now what we will do, we will distribute rings to 100 people, and then we will try to understand whether these people are getting job or not. So replicability is important. Otherwise,
and at the same time, we are selecting the sample in such a way that they will be average. And all will be the same. Otherwise, if you get the samples highly intellectual people, 100, then what is the result will be? More it will be inclined to get the job. So that is also, so selection of sample is also important.
So there are number of factors which plays role in getting the job, like variables we call it in research. Maybe qualification of the person, interview, how they interview the person, previous experience, or maybe in India, sometimes jack or the money in some cases. So probably these variables must be playing the role, but the person may conclude that because of rank. So it has to be replicable and open for inquiry. Not that just because I feel it, therefore it is true. It cannot be like that.
Research process is basically first and foremost, important is over here, it is getting an idea. That is to discover that idea. Yes, I want to work on this and I want to develop out of that. That idea has to get immersed. That is the context of discovery. Once that has been done, then...
So let's take the example. Say for example, idea kya hai? Is use of smartphone affecting sleep of the people? This is just an idea. So immediately we cannot conclude. So what we have to do, this is just an idea. We can form, yes, we can observe कि ऐसा हो रहा है, but by observing we got the idea, then we can form the hypothesis. How we can form the, we will talk about it. Or there can be so many problems, we can take like, just like an idea, on different aspect of human behavior.
So one aspect is getting an idea, the other side will be testing it.
Yes, exactly.
Now the need is to test it. Okay. Once the testing has been done with scientifically, then we can conclude, okay, whatever has been the smartphone disturbs the sleep of the person. That is true. But just because of you think, he thinks, we cannot say that like, yes, this is what happened.
You have to take a sample and systematically. Another example, say for example, watching violent scene on TV increases aggressive behavior in children. So this is just an idea. We have to check also whether somebody has worked on this area or not in research. We have to confirm it. Otherwise, we have to search the literature and all. We cannot just go ahead and do that. So we have to identify the problem which is not being studied by earlier people, or even if they studied, we have to refer what methodology they have. Yes.
Research biases. Before we begin that, we also try to understand what are research biases. One of the challenges while doing research is to remain objective and free from biases.
Yes, that is the most important.
Most important. Otherwise, person will not give the truth, the right truth.
Yes. I will show you, what is the difference between objective and subjective. Once the slide is there, which I will just show you. Just give me a second. Yeah. You will see what is what is objective experience and what is subjective experience. Many times people jumble in this and then the bias start. Objective experience.
An objective perspective is not influenced by emotions, opinions or personal
feelings.
Very good. That is important.
That is very important.
Subjective experience, a subjective perspective is open to greater interpretation based on personal feeling, emotion, aesthetics. Objective one, it is based in fact and it is quantifiable and measurable and it is verifiable. Where in case of subjective, it cannot be verified using concrete facts and figures. There is emotional reasoning. I feel it is true, therefore it is true, regardless of the observed evidence.
Say for example, one person is telling, like, is believing in one particular God, और उस God को क्या है, हर दिन वीक में 7 दिन है, 7 दिन अलग अलग कलर का ड्रेस पहनाते हैं. Now this person is not aware कि कल कौन सा पहनाने वाले हैं. So इसको रात में क्या हुआ कि सपने में आया या नींद में मालूम चला कि कल ऐसा वो ड्रेस पहनने वाले हैं. So next day fine in the morning when he went, so he saw कि वही ड्रेस है. Now this is called subjective experience. So replicable, that means what he has to next 100 days he has to predict on we can replicate like randomly, we can take different colors. Not on and if this person has got ability to understand what color that person is, right? So there can be replications, but this person is telling no, ये मेरा आध्यात्मिक अनुभव है. So and that's how many people in that experience they get fooled. They fool themselves in fact, because the replication is not possible here, and this is emotional reasoning is coming, subjective experience. It is called subjective experience.
Objective is a statement that is completely unbiased. It is not touched by the speaker's previous experiences or tastes. In case of subjective, it is ruled by the life memories, biases and prejudices of the person. It is based on how an individual perceives reality rather than reality itself.
Oh, I am perceiving. So I am not bothered about reality. Next slide.
If an observation cannot be recreated, then that original observation is usually deemed a coincidence or human error in observation.
Human error in observation, right? जैसा वो कौवा बैठ गया और वो टूट गया. But we cannot say that this is the fact,
Replication and reproduction of data is the only way that concepts become accepted in the scientific community. It reflects the perspective through which the speaker views reality. It has its basis inside of a person's mind. Subjective is a statement that has been colored by the character of the speaker or the writer. So that means whatever the agenda of person's agenda is there, he wants to put forth because he believes in, because he has taste, because he has experience. So that comes under subjective. Objective situations can be observed independent of personal biases and experience. So it is based on the hardcore evidences. Whereas subjective situation can usually only be viewed from one person, filtered through their unique lens of personal experience, taste, emotion and bias.
Well, I'll tell you one story, now many times what happens, some other people's previous subjective experiences, some people take it as a reality. I will give you one example. In Rajasthan, one person was there, so he was believer of भजन गाता था, तो कुछ लोगों ने कंप्लेन किया, तो वहाँ पर that time ब्रिटिश का रूल था, तो ब्रिटिश का वो मेन जो आदमी था वो घोड़े पे आया और कहा कि तुम्हारे में अगर ताकत है तो बताओ इस घोड़े के बीच में जो बच्चा है, मतलब पेट में बच्चा था घोड़ी के, तो इसका क्या डिस्क्रिप्शन है. तो उसने बोला कि इसके चारों पैर जो है वो वाइट है और वो फीमेल है अंदर, मतलब फीमेल के अंदर. तो इमीडिएटली उन्होंने कट किया और देखा तो सेम निकला. सो दिस इज दिस इज नॉट बीइंग एक्सपीरियंस्ड बाय द पर्सन बट experienced by somebody else. So now important is what here, replication is very important. Replication means what? Okay, अगर उसे कलर भी पता चलता है और जेंडर भी पता चलता है तो then we can conduct the same. अभी समझो कोई 100 लोग अभी जन्म में आने वाले 1000, we can ask the person to tell the gender, either tit or animal का या कलर का. So that is where लोग जो धोखा खाते हैं ना, in that subjective experience में they get into that and then the research process gets hampered. Subjective experiences are important. We will talk in case studies method and all that in psychology, in counselling, but they are important. But important thing is that when we are doing experimental research, that time there is no place for that particular thing, right? Now we can go back to
only experimental research, like in a day-to-day life also, if people started believing somebody else's emotional reasoning, then it is a problem. Okay.
Research biases.
Research biases, we have spoken this now. A variety of research biases. There are certain external influences, personal bias, observer bias. What do you mean by external influences, such as one's culture or the media can influence people to accept particular world view? Okay, so every community has something or some or the other, like influencing message, and if just because community leaders are talking about that and keeping that perspective at the time of a research, then would be a difficult.
So I'll give you an example. I'm Jain by birth. So one Jain साधु एक महीने पहले 15-20 दिन पहले टीवी के ऊपर इंटरव्यू आया था. What he said कि जो एनिमल्स को मारते हैं, कट करते हैं, उनमें से जो बददुआ निकलती है ना, उसके कारण अर्थक्वेक होता है. So the important so this is not proved. Important thing is what there are other factual reasons for earthquake, but this is like influence particular culture, one's own culture. If that influence is there, then the person who is watching that or believer in that particular thing will believe that yes, इसके वजह से ही होता है, right? Without doing systematic study or without concrete evidence. So that is where this bias can come.
Or like this is about about Jain community. Suppose in a Christian community, if they in one of the house, if the statue starts bleeding, they start believing human beings are pain, torture is increased, and this is it's intolerable, and that has been believed by that community. If the same thing has been viewed by Hindu people, they will say okay, they have other things to follow. So everybody has some emotional.
Subjectivity आता है, इसमें subjectivity आता है. जैसा गोट को काटना, ये अभी बकरीद आने वाला है इस महीने में, तो वो मुस्लिम के लिए फेथ है, बट जैन के लिए सुपरस्टिशन. So it is subjective element, right and wrong, So subjective element is there, relative. It is relative. So many and biases are many times when people form bias, that time they don't understand this relativism, cultural relativism.
So at the time of experimental research, it is very important to, when you enter in that research, then you keep your cultural influences, bias influences, otherwise that could lead to errors to the research, and person will not find the truth. Okay, or the significance of that research. That is the danger over here. Personal bias, we have spoken a lot. Observer bias operates when some events are taken as meaningful by some and not taken meaningful by others. In a group of people doing research, but something is meaningful for me, if something has happened, probably both we are joined together, we are doing it, this person is not finding that meaningful. So certain personal biases may come into the picture. Gender role expectation, these background factors can also affect the way that researchers observe and interpret even their lives. There is expectancy bias. Indicate expectancy can affect observation of behavior by encouraging reactions to the events being observed. Researchers sometimes expect to find specific outcomes. They may see what they expect to see rather than remain objective. That means if they want to see a certain B thing to happen in the research, they will manipulate all the events in such a way that research will lead to B. So that is nothing but his perspective, his agenda, his hidden agenda, he is bringing it out in form of the research. That is what it is expected or expectancy bias. Now in placebo bias, that suppose placebo bias when people strongly want to believe a treatment is successful. Okay, many of the times if it happens that patient goes to the doctor and doctor prescribed him a sugar pill. But just because doctor has prescribed, he starts getting the effect. That is nothing but it's a placebo effect.
Yeah.
Placebo effect. Approaching doctor himself, he started making the changes in his mind, and because of that, he started feeling like better. In other way around, in a very common example, I will like to give that if somebody is sharing somebody else food, कोई खाना खा रहा है और उसको देख के कोई स्टेयर कर रहा है खाना खा रहा है. Otherwise, in a people might say कि अरे दूसरा कोई स्टेयर कर रहा है तो तेरे को इंडाइजेशन होगा, but ultimately that belief has gone in his head. Somebody is sharing my food, and because of that he started feeling, and because of that feeling probably he might get indigestion. So that is nothing but placebo effect.
Many times, in actual when medicines are formed, so समझो सर दर्द करने का मेडिसिन है क्या, वो एक्चुअल जिनको सर दर्द है वो 100 सैंपल को दिया जाता है, और एक्चुअल मतलब जिनको रियल मेडिसिन दिया जाता है, और दूसरे को सिर्फ एक्चुअली शुगर पिल. सो देयर आल्सो द प्लेसिबो इज कंपेयर्ड कि ये एक्चुअल मेडिसिन में ताकत है या इट्स जस्ट अ प्लेसिबो.
In fact, for all the medication they do it placebo. Okay, just to test it ki whether that molecule is working or not. They keep one controlled placebo and they try it out, and that is also one research.
But sometimes some people might ignore that placebo, to just to prove the research, whatever they are doing.
Okay, there are certain steps in while doing this research methods. Number 1 is identification of the problem. Number 2 is hypothesis formulation. You have to find some tentative statement, okay, to find out the truth.
जैसे स्मार्टफोन excessive use of smartphone can disturb your sleep. So this is a tentative statement. This is a hypothesis.
Formula. And if it is true, that means your hypothesis is right. And if the statement is not true, that means your alternative, that it does not impact your sleep. Now the identification variables. There are certain variables which will help us to establish between the two aspects. One aspect is smartphone, and another aspect, outcome is sleep disturbance. So to formulate the relationship between them, so which variables will act, that we will need to find out.
So use of smartphone is independent variable, and dependent variable is effect on the sleep. Yes. So you have to check, the connection between independent and the dependent variable. It is called as cause and effect relationship.
Yeah. So we need to identify that. Now in this case, suppose that person is using the smartphone night time, then there is a possibility of sleep disturbance. If it's using a daytime, is there a possibility of sleep disturbance? May not. Okay. So you need to find out what is that right cause variable and what is that effect variable, which will lead to effect or the outcome.
Sir, but some like in call center it is night work, so then what?
Yes.
They form later on the rhythm. Rhythm, biorhythm. We have a biorhythm. That means, suppose if somebody is habituated right from the childhood to get up at 4 o'clock, so he will wake up all said and done by 2 o'clock also that person must have slept. He will get up at 4 o'clock. Okay, so that rhythm forms. Bio means bio natural rhythm that sets for the body. But now these call center guys, they have changed their biorhythm.
Yeah.
So they operate in other contexts. Long term also side effects are there pertaining to their biorhythm, because that is not a natural. Natural, it is meant that in the night you are supposed to sleep, but if you are doing opposite, right now it may not be the troublesome, but later on they will invite problems.
So then we can formulate the hypothesis कि वो night shift का effect health के ऊपर होता है क्या? So we can take a sample,
Sample.
you know, sample size जिन्होंने already night shift किया है कुछ सालों के लिए, and then you know we can meet these people कि उनका, और जिन्होंने day shift में काम किया है, compare control group and experimental group, isn't it? Then we can come to the conclusion. You know?
Yeah, right now also I cannot conclude that.
Okay.
Otherwise that will be my personal bias.
And important is किसी ने तो research किया ही रहेगा इसके ऊपर, so we have to refer that, you will come to know, but at that moment we don't know, so we are talking about that.
We can have our hypothesis.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So say for example one more hypothesis we can form कि is parent marital relationship affects child's marital relationship. Parent का relationship जो है तो उनके बच्चे के ऊपर उनका उस बच्चे के मैरिज के रिलेशनशिप के ऊपर असर होता है क्या? You know, so we have to take now sample जिनमें मतलब disturbed relationship है, और जिसमें peaceful है, और फिर दोनों we have to compare, you know, and again there can be, you know, important है कि because this is a bit complex because यहाँ पर दोनों partner का आएगा ना, understand? So accordingly we have to, you know, manipulate.
Find the sample accordingly. What
Yes,
is the objectivity of the research? Once you fix the problem and objectivity, then you have to go back and get the similar samples. Preserve that samples for so many years, follow up on that and get the information.
It depends on whether you are doing longitudinal study or not. Longitudinal study जो काफी सालों तक चलता है,
काफी सालों तक ही इस सिलसिले में काफी साल तक ही चलेगा. बच्चों का मतलब पेरेंट्स का मैरिटल डिस्टर्बेंस एंड बच्चों का पैरेंटल डिस्टर्बेंस. Design formulation in research. Okay, so it is a blueprint because
so you have to form the blueprint. How we are going to conduct the research?
Yes.
Because when we say that it has to be replicable, so to make the replicable for other researchers, okay, in future, so it has to be a blueprint, black and white, transparent. These are the things which has been like, you know, undergone, and it has to be like, you know, properly written. It's not in something in somebody's head, you know. So that is the blueprint one has to prepare. Data analysis and their interpretation. Okay, fourth step, conclusion, then draw the conclusion. Preparation of report and publication, what you have concluded, what is your report, and you can publish it later. Also there is a reliability and validity also. Okay, it has to be reliable and it has to be valid also. The goal of a research design, obtain information relevant to the purpose of the study. So it's not like, you know, obtain all the information which is relevant to the study. You cannot go and get like, you know, information of like, you know, suppose in case of these two disturbances, like, you know, parents marriage disturbance and at the same time child's marriage disturbance. So get the information relevant to that. If you go and try to find out how that children is behaving in the school, it is not probably relevant. Collect the information with the maximal reliability and validity. So what is the meaning of reliability? Any significant results must be repeatable. Other researchers able to repeat exactly in the same manner, same experiment, under same condition, ensure acceptance of hypothesis by all, product statistically significant results. Okay, so whatever it has been designed, it has to be the same so that it can be a repeatable. If you are performing a time critical experiment, if you are performing a time critical experiment, you will be using the same type of a stopwatch. It is assumed that the instruments are reliable and will keep the true and accurate time. Measurements taken many times to minimize the chances of malfunction and maintain validity. That means the stopwatch which you are using, that has also need to have certain criteria, and the same has to be used, you know. Methods estimating reliability, external consistency procedure and internal consistency procedure. I think I will skip this. in case of test, retest reliability, suppose एक group पे हम लोग ने कुछ test किया है 2015 में, okay, और same test same group में किया है तो it is 2016 में किया है, okay, तो sample है, but यहाँ पे sample has to be the same group. There should not be a variation in the sample group. The same sample यहाँ पे भी है, same sample वहाँ पे भी है. Then that data will be reliable कि ये दो time period में हुआ क्या है. Like you know. I'll just skip this. This was just to give an idea about what is reliability. There are different methods to to prove reliability. Validity refers to a degree to which test measure what it claims to measure. Okay. It is very necessary for a test to be valid for its proper administration and interpretation. That means it's measured what degree it is measuring. Types of validity, face validity है, discriminate validity है, content validity है, criteria validity है, concurrent. These are different 9 validity types are there. We'll skip this I think. Just in case of I'll take this example now. Construct validity. Construct validity means what? The measurement actually measures the constructs they are designed to measure. Now I decided I have to measure in this relationship establishment. And to that, suppose if I am undertaking, I want to find out the leadership quality or leadership quality of the person or the group of people. Okay. And if I want to find out leadership quality and if I am trying to get the information whether that person is extrovert or whether he has a reading ability, it will not match or it will not lead to the leadership quality. So what is important जो करने जाना है, जो फाइंड आउट करना है उसी का टेस्ट लेना है, दूसरा लेके फायदा होने वाला है.
सपोज आपको डॉक्टर ने ब्लड टेस्ट करने के लिए बोला है, सपोज आपको ब्लड में और आपने अगर यूरिन किया तो इट इज लाइक दैट. या आपको जो बोला आपको इधर का एक्सरे निकालना है और आप इधर का निकाल के लेगा, इट इज नॉट गोइंग टू वर्क. इन अदर वर्ड्स, so whatever the research or the instrument you are creating, it should measure what it's supposed to measure.
There are threats of internal validity. There are certain threats of internal validity. I think we will skip this also. We will come to certain variables. Now we have said that certain variables we need to identify because of which outcome is dependent. Okay. So we talked about something like we have fixed the problem. After fixing the problem, we made certain hypothetical statement that because of the usage of the smartphone, there is a sleep disturbance. Okay. So when we know that this is the problem and we have stated the hypothetical statement, we come to certain terminology known as variables. Now what are these variables? There are different types of variables. One is stimulus, organism and response variable. We will come to once we will see this slide. Second is independent and dependent variable, and third is extraneous and confounded variables. Already see what is stimulus, organism and response variables. SOR model. It is also known as SOR model. SOR model to explain all behavior or causes of behavior. S is the symbol for stimulant and the category may be referred to in general as a stimulus variable.
So whatever is happening outside me is all stimulus for me.
Yes.
Say boss is not behaving the way I want, or child is not behaving the way I want,
Exactly.
or I missed the train. So all this is stimulus, and in that O stands for organism. I am there, right? So certain variables are there outside, certain variables are there inside, and response. My response will come, right? So So variables are present at all three levels. Stimulus, there are some variables, organism and the response. So there are, that's why
So example is form of energy in the environment, such as light, which the organism is sensitive. Okay, so light also can be the, like whatever is outside me, that becomes a stimulus. Then next is O is the symbol of organism variable, that is the changeable physiological and psychological characteristics of the organism, that is anxiety level, age, heart rate. Okay. R is the symbol of the response and in the general response variable, which refer to some behavior or action of the organism, like pressing a lever and reaction to any stimulus, or the example of responses variables. Okay. Now suppose if stimulus in the night, if I am driving car, suppose from the opposite side a car light flashed. Okay, so that becomes a stimulus, and because of that my heartbeat increase. Now where am I going? Okay, so that is become my that is O, and my response is like anxiety or like anxious. Now experiment conducted to explain SOR model. What is that? Rat is placed on a metal grid floor. Grid is electrified. Length of time rat takes to jump from grid to platform measured using SOR model. V is the intensity of the shock, value of variable. That means थोड़ा कम दिया, थोड़ा ज़्यादा लिया, थोड़ा माइल्ड रखा तो वो चल के गया, थोड़ा ज़्यादा दिया तो फटक से जंप किया. So that is also intensity of the shock. Shock is the independent variable. उसके वजह से आउटकम क्या हो रहा है? रैट जंप हो रहा है. Okay. Example is OV. OV is organismic variable. उसमें क्या होगा? Organismic variable means that is skin. It's skin resistance. If that rat is able to tolerate high intensity electric shock also, then also he will take longer time to cross the grid. So it depends on the organismic variable also. Skin अगर thick है उसका, then also it will matter. R is elapsed time between the onset of shock and rat reaches to the platform. So with this they have explained SOR model. Now coming to the independent variable. Independent variable or stimulus variable is a factor manipulated or selected by the experimenter to ascertain its relationship. Okay. Dependent variable is the factor that appears, disappears or varies as the experimenter introduces, removes or varies the independent variable, and it is the measure of the behavior of the subject. I will directly take an example. If you find a relationship between meaningfulness of the learning material and speed of learning. Speed of learning then depends upon the meaningfulness. The greater the meaningfulness, the faster will be the learning. The speed of the learning is therefore called dependent variable and meaningfulness is the independent
yes,
variable.
the material meaningfulness.
Yeah. So it is cause over here is meaningfulness of the content, meaningfulness of the material becomes the independent variable and that becomes the cause, and outcome will be the speed of learning. So in other example, rest between work periods, output of a work. Rest between work periods is independent variable and output of a work. If the person is resting between some period between two projects, so probably his output would be better. So dependent variable will be output of a work and rest between the work becomes the independent. Sudden noise, change in the breathing. So sudden noise becomes independent variable and changes in breathing will become the outcome. So it is dependent variable. Okay.
So I'll give you, some examples. Here, dependent and independent variable. BARC fit, Shankaracharya Swami Swarupanand Saraswati. He made certain statement. कि बिकॉज यू नो साईं बाबा की पूजा कर रहे हैं, इसकी वजह से महाराष्ट्र में सूखा पड़ गया था. सो इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल इज साईं बाबा की पूजा करना, दैट इज अ कॉज. डिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल इज महाराष्ट्र में गवर्नमेंट. और एक था कि कॉज इज और इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल इज व्हाट. शनि शिंगणापुर में महिलाओं को प्रवेश वर्जित किया गया, इसकी वजह से रेप्स बढ़ रहे हैं. सो रेप इज एन डिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल एंड इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल इज व्हाट, वहां पर महिला को रिस्ट्रिक्ट किया जाने के लिए. सिमिलरली कॉज इज क्या है, हनीमून के लिए जाने वाले जो लोग हैं उत्तराखंड में, उसकी वजह से 2013 में उत्तराखंड में पड़ गया है. So you know, so we can categorize independent variable, this is dependent variable, and we can study the relationship. But you know, here we can discard all this because उसमें कुछ ये नहीं है. But you know, just to make you aware कि what is exactly independent variable, what is dependent variable. Independent variable यहाँ पर क्या है कि औरतों को रिस्ट्रिक्ट की, उनको परमिशन दिया मंदिर में जाने के लिए. डिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल इज इंक्रीज इन रेट. सो ये पता होना चाहिए. और यू नो कि व्हाट इज योर इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल, व्हाट इज योर डिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल. इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल इज आल्सो कॉल्ड एज कॉज एंड डिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल इज आल्सो कॉल्ड एज इफेक्ट. सो कॉज एंड इफेक्ट रिलेशनशिप needs to be.
If we consider that is truth, then in that case we have to prove that like that is the independent variable to affect this.
Once you know, one Dr. Abrampour, he went to his sister's place and sister उनको खांसी आ रही थी, तो his sister said you take this medicine. तो मेडिसिन दिया, और मेडिसिन देने के जब वो ले रहे थे तो क्या बोला, you take name of Jesus Christ also. So what Dr. Kaur said, I will only take medicine or I will only take the name of Jesus Christ. Then only we will come to know exactly कि क्या work हुआ है. This is where you know the control of variable. Otherwise what happens, you know, there are two independent variables, you know, the name of the God and again the medicine. So two independent variables are mixed, then result can be cure or not cure. So क्या होगा, क्योर होगा तो पर्सन में मेडिसिन से हुआ रहेगा तो पर्सन में टेल गॉड, या गॉड से हुआ रहेगा तो पर्सन में टेल बिकॉज ऑफ मेडिसिन. सो वी हैव टू यू नो कंट्रोल द वेरिएबल in order to perform the research. Control how? Take one independent variable and control all the other variable. Then only you will come to know ki what exactly works. And we cannot only conclude by one. You have to take sample, you know, 550 और 500 सैंपल. उनको एक को सिर्फ गॉड का नाम लेने के लिए बोलो जिनको खांसी आ रहा है, या दूसरे को मेडिसिन दो, या मे बी अदर डिसीजेस, isn't it? So that is where you know we have to be careful. ये independent control of variable is also one important concept in this.
Now coming to extraneous variable. Now we have understood like what is independent variable and what is dependent variable. We are very clear. Like dependent variable is depend on independent variable. ये हुआ तो ही depend का effect होगा, नहीं तो नहीं होगा. Okay. Now extraneous variables, any and all other variables that may mask the relationship between independent variable and dependent variable are known as extraneous variables. Okay. That any other variable which will mask the effect of independent variable and dependent. I'll give you one example. लड़का पढ़ाई उसने की, उसके वजह से उसको अच्छे मार्क्स आए. ओके, लड़के ने पढ़ाई अच्छी की, उसके वजह से उसको मार्क्स अच्छे आए. According to this, like independent variable is efforts he has put in into the study and outcome is result. But now over here, उसके माँ ने नवस बोला कि मेरे लड़के को अगर अच्छे मार्क्स मिले तो मैं तुझे इतना इतना दूंगी, या फिर मैं इतने दिन बिना जल के रहूंगी. उसके वजह से हुआ, रिजल्ट हुआ. So that becomes your extraneous variable. Any other variable which will mask the relationship between the real cause of independent variable and dependent variable. So this is the extraneous variable. How does extraneous variable affect? May direct affect the dependent variable or may combine with the independent variable or to produce an effect. Okay, यहाँ ये केस में तो clear है, पर जब रिसर्च करते हैं तो you are unable to find out कि कौन से variables है वो उसके link हो रहे हैं, and we are unable to find out also many of the times. To control that in the experiment, it is very important. So therefore, extraneous variables must be controlled so that experimenter can determine whether the dependent variable changes in relation to variation in the independent variable or because of the nervous or because of the fasting or because of this. Several other factors operating in a real life situation may affect changes in the dependent variable. These factors not measured in the study may increase or decrease the magnitude or strength of the relationship between independent or dependent variable. Okay. Now, confounding variable is one that varies with the independent variable. While doing study, if we are not careful, then two variables may get combined. जो अभी एग्जाम्पल बताया, मेडिसिन लूंगा या फिर जीसस का नाम, तो दोनों अगर कंफाउंडिंग है तो फिर one cannot say that किसके वजह से क्या हुआ. Okay.
You already seen the confounding. Hypothesis.
Okay. We'll see this example and then we'll move to the next step. Okay. Just to reinforce once again what is independent variable, what is dependent variable, and what is extraneous variable. Now, there is a statement that because smoking leads to heart problems, okay, heart diseases. Okay. If you want to check this now, whether it is this is if we consider this is the independent variable and this is a dependent variable. But to affect this, there could be several other variables also. Like if it is the age of the person, okay, yes. Could be the possibility, the extent of her smoking. Once in a year it is smoking, once in a month is smoking, he is a chain smoker, once in a 6 months, what is the frequency, the duration of the smoking. Then the extent of daily exercise, etc. That also can add to whether it is going to get the coronary heart diseases or not. So all these factors becomes they affect the relationship. No doubt they affect the relationship, but they become the extraneous variables. But your independent variable will be the smoking, which will lead to the heart problems.
You have to control them. Extraneous variable.
Yes, you have to control. Now, when you want to establish the relationship between them, then you have to take charge of, and you have to when at the time of selection of the samples, you have to ensure that it is common for everybody. Age is common, duration of the smoking is common, Now coming to hypothesis. Hypotheses are the mechanism and container of knowledge moving from the unknown to known. Okay. So these elements form techniques and testing ground for scientific discovery. Hypotheses are tentative explanation and potential answer to a problem. Hypothesis gives the direction. It helps the researcher interpret data. Errors in hypothesis testing are also highlighted. Okay, so these are certain hypothesis is considered a tentative and testable statement of the possible relationship between two or more events variables under investigation. So what are the characteristics of hypothesis? Should be conceptually clear. Hypothesis must be testable. Hypothesis should be related to the existing body or theory and impact. Hypothesis should have a logical unity or comprehensive. Hypothesis should be capable of verification. Hypothesis should be operationalizable.
So very important. It must be testable, verifiable. It should be clear, not ambiguous. Ambiguous रहेगा तो then and the problem must be solvable. That is also very important. While forming hypothesis.
Okay. Now once it is formulation of hypothesis, science proceed with observation किया है, hypothesis form किया है, hypothesis testing के लिए now we are ready also. After testing the hypothesis through various statistical tests, research can accept or reject the hypothesis.
Yes.
Then we can, after forming, just now I formed the hypothesis that in excessive use of smartphone,
Due to sleep disturbance.
it gets sleep disturbance. So after doing research and then using statistical techniques and all, either what my hypothesis will be true
Or will not be.
will not be true,
Yes.
isn't it? So I need
If it
to
is
accept.
true, then accept. And if it is not true, then
Then
reject.
Okay.
Reject the statement.
And no manipulation. Many times what happens is, from researchers' point of view, they just want to prove that particular thing, so they manipulate the data.
And somebody wants to promote smartphones. What they will do research? Okay. Technical usage of smartphone has increased the high results in studies. If that is the statement, they will have that research accordingly. Difficulties in formulation of good hypothesis. Many of the time there certain difficulties comes. That is absence of knowledge of a theoretical framework.
Yes.
First and foremost is important that person needs to know that what is the frame of knowledge. If detailed theoretical evidences are not available, or if the investigator is not aware of the availability of those theoretical evidences, then we cannot proceed.
So theoretical knowledge, I cannot form hypothesis in mathematics or physics. I am a psychologist. So I need to have knowledge about the subject before I proceed a hypothesis. That's very important.
When the investigator is not aware of the scientific knowledge also, technique also, then also it will be difficult. Types of hypothesis, that is, hypothesis can be classified into several types like universal hypothesis, existential hypothesis, conceptual hypothesis, but broadly hypotheses are divided into two types, that is null hypothesis
Yes,
and alternative hypothesis. Null hypothesis means what? Now we have identified ये cause है, ये independent variable है, and because of this independent variable, this is the outcome. This is the dependent variable. Okay. And if I say because of this is happening, that means there is no relationship between the two variables. That is the zero relationship between these two variables. That becomes the null hypothesis. So my hypothetical statement, there is no relation. What is the objective of research? To establish the relationship between two variables. Two variables are which? एक cause है, एक effect है. अगर मेरा hypothetical statement में null hypothesis क्या बोलता है? There is no relationship between two variables. That is my one. And alternative hypothesis, there is a relationship between. So at the end of the experiment, if the results come in favor of null hypothesis, I accept null hypothesis and reject alternative hypothesis. If my outcome comes in favor of alternative hypothesis, I will accept alternative hypothesis and reject null hypothesis.
So, excessive usage of smartphone does disturb the sleep. And second statement I will make, it does not disturb the sleep.
So, does not disturb the sleep becomes my null hypothesis, and my alternative hypothesis, it does disturb. So, you check those statements having the scientific steps.
I cannot accept both because logically either it will be true or not true. So either I will accept null or I will accept alternative hypothesis.
पर ये कभी होगा जब हम लोग वो रिसर्च प्रॉब्लम आइडेंटिफाई करेंगे, वेरिएबल्स फाइंड आउट करेंगे, हाइपोथेसिस करेंगे, सैंपल पे करेंगे, खुद का इमोशनल रीजनिंग नहीं लाएंगे, तब ये जाने के बाद. So today's hour it is important to have that research perspective in day-to-day life events also. just because community leaders are saying, just because political leaders are saying, just because mass media is projecting,
Yes, yes.
whether to accept or not. You know, that is the question, and to have the research perspective is very, very important. Not only for the scientist, but like in today's common man's life also. So I will go ahead with this. Okay, errors in testing hypothesis. Okay, error क्यों होता है? Hypothesis statement में ही क्यों होता है? Sampling procedure adopted is faulty. If I want to study, okay, students like who are studying, whose IQ is like average and above average, and if I take a sample of highly intellectual students, then it will not give the result what I meant to get the result. Okay, so sample faulty sample, data collection method inaccurate. Okay, study design selected is faulty. Inappropriate statistical methods. Then conclusion drawn are incorrect. Two common errors exist when testing hypothesis: type 1 error and type 2. Type 1 error means rejection of null hypothesis. जहाँ पे है वहाँ पे मैंने क्या बोला है? It is true. Vice versa किया है. And type 2 it is acceptance of a null hypothesis बोला है. वहाँ पे it is when it is false.
And because of various reasons, maybe data collection method में गड़बड़ है या sample में, so वो actually जो नहीं है वो fact मैंने उल्टा कर दिया.
Now coming to sampling. So research usually cannot make direct observation of every individual in the population and understand. It is just not possible to do it on entire population. So for this researcher, it is very important to select the right sample out of the population. Okay, so that
like
is nothing but the
before
sample.
election, they predict the result, sampling survey, right? So
Survey.
what they do, they use sampling technique. Can they go ask इतना करोड़ वोटर्स को सबको थोड़ी पूछते हैं? They have this sampling होता है उसमें. इस हर एक स्टेट में फिर मेल का कितना, फीमेल का कितना, फिर एज ग्रुप का क्राइटेरिया, then फिर again कास्ट का क्राइटेरिया, इनकम का, so many criteria can be there. So वो वही लोगों का वो sample, they will take the sample, and then only they will predict.
In fact, suppose if I want to identify the stress level in working class, so in that case I cannot go to all the companies and inquire and then I can come to conclusion. I will pick up some industry which
ये तो पूरा लाइफ चला जाएगा. So there the sampling is important. So there are various ways. We will not go into that. The sampling.
Yeah. We'll just.
I will I will tell you methods. Some few methods of not sampling, research methods. Right. I will tell you there are various types of research. Right. Now we have talked so many things. Sampling के बारे में बात किया, hypothesis, then independent variable, dependent variable. Now we will see some methods as well. There are 4 methods. I will talk and then we will stop here. Because now we have understood theoretically, yes. These are the various ways. Now we will try to understand the methods. The first method is survey method, survey research method.
Survey is a process which may involve an investigation, examination or assessment.
So it's a survey.
Survey is a brief interview or discussion with individual about a specific topic. It involves asking questions to respondent, and survey method tries to gather data about people, their thoughts, behavior. Survey method is a non-experimental. It does not involve any observation under controlled condition. It is descriptive research method.
So we have come to know now 2 types of method. One is experimental method, where the experiment is there. This is descriptive method. So both the types of research are used in research methodology. So जिसमें एक तो है experiment किया है और जिसमें survey है, right?
It's largely qualitative method and it is also used to collect data for studying large samples. Data is collected with the help of standardized questionnaire, intensive one-to-one interview, short paper pencil feedback with the help of statistical tool. Survey method is one of the technique of applied research.
Next. Yeah, well, previous slide.
Survey is administered on sample of respondents from populations. What is population? Population is nothing but universal. It is collection of people or objects that would possess at least one common characteristics which is going to be helpful and would provide a direction in the process of conducting research.
Yes. So population is as a whole.
Yeah. So suppose if I want to find out third grade children whether they know how many spellings. I cannot go in the world and get all the third grade students' children. What I will do is I will take a proper sample. Population becomes this entire universe of third grade standard children. But I need to sample out of that.
उसमें भी I have to take, maybe their medium, मतलब vernacular medium, English medium, or maybe their urban, rural, then economic
strata.
strata.
So all that has to be defined before sampling them. Survey method is useful, helpful in collection of data, though direct observation, example face-to-face interview, indirect observation, opinions on library services of an institute.
Yes. Now we will see various steps involved in survey research. Next.
Determination of the aims and objectives of study. Analyze and assess relevant areas or issues which need to be studied. That is, aim क्या है, objective क्या है, should be clearly specified.
Yes.
Define the population to be studied.
Yeah, you have already said about the population.
Design and construct a survey. Okay. तो कौन सा survey method use करने वाले हैं?
Either whether we are going to use telephonic survey or questionnaire or, and it's very important to conduct pilot study. What is pilot study? Is small survey taken in advance of a major investigation or research. It is like pilot study means not a real study.
Suppose if I want to do it all over India, some study, whether one product is acceptable all over India, fraternity. Okay, so what I do it, I will conduct that in a Mumbai. If I decide, पहले मैं मुंबई में देखूंगी, outcome क्या है देखूंगी, okay, डॉक्टर्स के पास जाके feedback लूंगी, and then I will set the questionnaire. So while conducting in Mumbai, what I'll do it, if I need to make certain changes in my instrument, in my questionnaire, I can correct it and then I can apply the feedback.
Now अभी क्या है, ट्रेन में जो है, एक पायलट स्टडी का एक एग्जांपल आई कैन गिव. ट्रेन में अभी टिकट टीसी भी दे सकता है, हाँ, पर कुछ ट्रेन में वो एक्सपेरिमेंटल बेसिस पे शुरू किया है. So that is called pilot study. या कुछ स्टेशन के ऊपर मोबाइल से टिकटिंग का बीच में. So it is not all. So before they do it for all, they just start pilot.
Small sample they do check.
So similarly pilot study में भी हम लोग वो करते हैं, then only. Otherwise क्या होगा, आपने पूरा कर दिया पर आपको पता चला कि आपके बेसिक इसमें गड़बड़ है. So just to understand कि whether whatever process we are doing is correct.
Select a representative sample.
Now this will be clear. This is population, this is universe. Then dot is a target. But you cannot take all the target.
Yes, it's not possible.
Right. So select sample from target population. So again these dots are our target, and from these targets we will again select some sample by using sample method, sampling method. Next. Yes.
Administer the survey by using instrument or tool on selected sample, and this step helps in a collection of data or information from the sample. Okay. Analyze and interpret the findings of the survey. With the help of statistical tool, analyze data and interpret findings. Then coding the data, then process it. Prepare the report of the survey. At the end you prepare the report. Communicate the findings of the survey. Methods or instruments used in collecting data in survey research. Now in survey research, certain questionnaire, that is group administered questionnaire, mail survey, household drop-off survey, or it could be an interview, structured interview, unstructured interview, or telephonic interview. This could be the methods to get the data collection.
So sampling, we have already spoken about sampling.
Example.
Yes, there is an example. Researcher wants to study the level of job satisfaction among employees. Then researcher can select and study the attitude of at least 10% of each department. That is what exactly I have told you. To avoid any bias.
Sampling can be done with the help of randomization. A method of sampling which provides an equal chance for each subject to be involved in the study, which can be done with the help of lottery or fishbowl technique. Okay. Or stratification method of sampling, which categorize the population into various categories and subcategories and then conduct the research.
So this is how the example questionnaire. It's a paper
pencil and multiple choice test helps to collect the data.
So group administered questionnaire, then mail survey. Through mail also we can household drop-up survey. Door to door they can go and conduct a survey. Interview, face-to-face interview, structured interview, unstructured interview, and telephonic interview. There are different types of interview.
These are different type of why it is. If it is structured interviews, there the questionnaire is set, and you get the desired whatever is expected out of this structured questionnaire. But many of the time, if we have the certain objective of the research is something like that, if you want to know more than that of the structured questionnaire, and you want to really find out the issues or the problems or the feelings and the feedback from the person, that time if it is unstructured, then you try to get that qualitative information from the people. That is the benefit.
So there are various type of survey, cross-sectional and longitudinal. Cross-sectional, which this method is used when researcher wants to collect data from varied or different types of groups at a single time. So maybe in terms of age, sex, group, nation, tribes, and so on. Similarly, longitudinal survey.
Study same sample for a longer period of time. This method is used to study long-term effects on the selected sample. Longitudinal studies may use to study behavioral changes, attitude changes, religious effects, any event or practice that may have a long time effect on the selected sample or
I will give you one example of longitudinal studies, wherein there is one experiment carried in psychology that is on delaying gratification, marshmallow test. So this is longitudinal studies. उन्होंने क्या किया कि बच्चों के सामने एक प्लेट रखा और उसमें चॉकलेट्स रखे and they have told children कि we will come after 15 minutes. अगर आपके प्लेट में अगर चॉकलेट्स मिलते हैं, 2 चॉकलेट्स जो रखे हैं, you will get 2 more chocolates. So now अभी क्या हो गया कि बच्चे हैं, तो कुछ बच्चों ने होल्ड किया अपने आप को, आँख बंद कर ली, डिस्ट्रैक्ट किया, सॉन्ग ये किया, और अपने आप को होल्ड किया, so they got 2 more chocolates. कुछ बच्चों ने फटाक से वो खा लिया. Now they have carried out longitudinal research on them. They were observing them कि उनके लाइफ में क्या हो रहा है आगे, तो अगले 20, 25, 30 साल जितना भी पॉसिबल हो, that is longitudinal studies. So what they have found, जिन लोगों ने फटाक से खाया था, they were impulsive in their life, they were having problem in their education, their financial, they अच्छी तरह से their relationship में problem थे. Whereas जिन्होंने अपने आप को होल्ड किया था, उनका एजुकेशन में भी अच्छे थे, करियर में भी उन्होंने काफी प्रोग्रेस किया था, रिलेशनशिप में भी उनमें प्रॉब्लम कम था. So that we come to know through longitudinal survey or longitudinal study. So that is the importance of this longitudinal. Just like longitudinal, इसमें भी अलग-अलग studies है. We will not go into that. There are 3 panel studies है, trend studies है, then cohort studies है in longitudinal. How to construct survey research, So there are some parameters to हमें उसका content क्या है, wordings क्या है, format क्या है. We have to decide. We cannot decide just like this. It has to be systematic. Then there are types of questions in survey research. There are different types of questions we can use.
structured questions. They are pre-planned and predetermined in advance. Then there is also like dichotomous question.
In the structured question,
in the structure from dichotomous. What do you mean by that? Two possible responses: yes, no, true, false. Please mention your gender. Now here it is male, female.
So this has to be here because of
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does the library of your university has an electronic database system? Yes or no? So like it is straightforward, true or false or whatever it is, they have to tick mark.
So this is dichotomy.
Structured one.
Then nominal measurement.
The nominal measurement based on needs, classification of persons, objects and groups. Its qualitatively scales and measurements made are called qualitative data. Example of this classification: gender क्या है, nationality क्या है, he has to write it, ethnicity क्या है, language क्या है, Marathi, English, Hindi, style क्या है,
And so
all
on.
this.
So now see the example of a nominal measurement. Please state the category to which you belong. So general OBC, you have to just tick mark.
Yes.
So this is called nominal. This is I'm talking about survey. There is one more thing in this, second is ordinal measure.
Yeah, ordinal measurement based on the ranks and the preferences. Example: to measure consumer satisfaction of microwave ovens, ask them to specify their feelings. Very dissatisfied, somewhat dissatisfied, somewhat satisfied, or very satisfied. Okay. So the items in the scale are ordered ranging from least to most satisfied, and ordinal scales allow comparisons of the degree to which two subjects possess the dependent variable. Level of measurement based questions. Interval measurement based on ratings, like responses scales which are ratings of 1 to 10, 5, 1 to 7, 1 to 9.
So there is, for something Likert is a person name. इसमें 1 to 7, 1 to 5, 1 to 9. इसमें 5 point rating scale लिया है. 1 is strongly agree, 2 agree, 3 is cannot say, 4 disagree, and 5 strongly disagree. So if suppose they are taking 7 points, so 1 to 7 रहेगा, 9.9. I hope you got this.
Yes.
Right? So then accordingly, these things will be used in survey. When they construct the survey, these types of things will be there in that. There is one more thing.
Filter or contingency questions. These questions are framed in such a way that it is followed by succeeding questions, which are subparts of the main question. Have you ever regularly attended the library of your university? Yes, no. If yes, then how many times? Once in a month, twice in a month, every week of the month?
Question
and every month.
there can be again, उसमें भी और भी हो सकता है. But too many again, it's not so good.
But if you are understanding, this is all we are forming the instrument. Instrument is that is nothing but it's, whether it is in the form of questionnaire, survey or interview or whatever. Ultimate goal of this is get the data. And get the data, then you do the statistical analysis, then you do the come to the conclusion, and then you establish between the relationship between two variables, what we have stated as a hypothesis.
So maintaining interest, जिसका survey ले रहे हैं वो भी important है. Again, unstructured questions are also there. It is usually interview. Unstructured होता है survey में भी. There are some questions. Now precaution while designing survey. Item should be clear, specific and relevant, short, ज़्यादा confusing नहीं होना चाहिए, empathy होना चाहिए जो survey जिसका वो ले रहा है survey जो आदमी, bias नहीं होना चाहिए. Advantages and there are some disadvantages. It is convenient and less time consuming. Then disadvantage, privacy नहीं होता है. अगर आप group में कर रहे हो तो सबका reveal हो जाता है. And longitudinal studies में especially attrition rate और high होता है. Suppose आप 25 साल का स्टडी कर रहे हैं तो 25 साल में suppose 100 सैंपल है आपका, तो maybe 20-30 people will drop out or you will not know where they are. Right. So that is another thing. There are some issues which are related to survey. We will see the second method, that is case study method.
Case study can be applied on a single subject, small and large group, class within school, or school within city or event. Case study method involves an in-depth study, longitudinal examination of a single subject or event, and it may be descriptive or exploratory.
So either it is single subject, small or large group, और एक ही इसमें ज़्यादा डिटेल में चले जाती है case studies में. In survey, there are number of people are more, but whereas in here focus is more on one individual person or on a small group. Right?
Suppose if it is a case study, if you want to see the impact of consumption of alcohol in pregnant women, so you cannot create a sample and allow that pregnant lady to drink. So you have to find, because it is unethical.
Yes.
So you have to find those women who are consuming alcohol. So we have to approach them and study.
Yes.
Okay. So it becomes a deeper and case study. Like done it on the 55 women for 3 months, 9 months, and observed them. So that becomes a case study.
Yeah, case study is more or less similar to survey method, but instead of collecting data about few factors from number of sample, the researcher may make a depth and intensive study of a single subject. It is limited in scope, but more exhaustive and more informative as compared to survey. Example: 3 students who failed in mathematics for 3-unit test continuously. Teacher may use case study to identify causes of failure and decision about remedial measure. So then usko kyun hua hai, they will go in detail. What are the causes, and then they may come up with some remedial measure. So this is case study method. Nature
so in that case, they will go to their culture also, home also, what is the kind of atmosphere has been provided to them, their food habits and whatnot. They will go in detail.
So case study maybe there are it's about I have already told you single person. इसमें भी case studies में there are in clinical psychology case study is used. This is very important. Patient's previous history regarding the person's mental health status, previous history. To know about patient's physical and mental health, case studies to make an accurate diagnosis. This is used to know about the patient's past and the present health related issues and environmental problems. So case study method is used. Sigmund Freud used case study method to assist his subject in solving personality problems. The detailed accounts of interviews and his interpretations of their thoughts, dreams, action provide excellent example of case studies. Sigmund Freud, so detailed, क्योंकि Sigmund Freud का जो psychoanalysis था, वो काफी दिनों तक चलता था. So he used this method. He used to keep records of his clients.
Diagnosis and remedial measures.
Where it is used, again to diagnose. Diagnosis में भी case clinical इसमें काफी इसका application है case study का.
Yeah. So in fact, if any drug comes in the market, first doctor will ask, इसका clinical references जरा दिखा. Okay. So that is case studies दिखा. That means. Counselors, social workers and other practitioners conduct case studies for diagnosing particular condition or problem and recommending remedial measures. Counselors collect data an individual as a unique case or collect data from small group for depth study, and the case study approach is also used to study behavioral problems of children in school.
So one case is coming to me for counseling. So when I am talking to a client, she is a girl and she is studying in college. There are some problems in her. When I was talking to her, I realized because of her parental communication also, there are some issues. So now I have spoken to parents as well. So now I got more data. So to understand, the real causes of the problem, so I can suggest the remedial measure accordingly. So that is where I am using case study method.
To collect relevant data about the case or cases, following techniques are used: observation.
Observation I am using in counseling.
Interviews. Psychological tests and inventories and archive records also.
So this the record which is there with the client, past का कुछ record है क्या, previous history है क्या, that record also can be helpful कि इसका overall history क्या है.
Reality, nature of the case study, reality.
It's reality based surveys, subjective bias उसमें आ सकता है. Threat to objective data gathering analysis technique. Researchers must be skilled thoroughly to avoid bias. Provide valid and reliable result. So So there are criteria. Use information oriented sampling. Take extreme or typical cases. If you want to study, take extreme or typical cases in case study. Do not take average cases because you will not get much data. Case study should identify deeper causes behind problem. That is what exactly I mean. So there are critical cases, extreme cases. There are types of. So I will not go into this. We will move on to. There are steps in case studies. Again, we will not go on in that. I have already told you about case study. There are ways of case studies. Misconception. We will talk about ex post facto research. This is the third method. What is this?
Okay.
Well, yes.
When the researcher wants to study the cause of an event which has already occurred as an effect of the cause, then research ex post facto research. Example, recession effect, but cause is not known. Ex post facto research tries to find out cause behind the effect.
Yes. Now the traditional इसमें क्या है जैसे हमने we have seen independent variable, dependent variable, that is experimental research. This ex post facto research is different from experimental research. In experimental research, we know the cause and we want to identify the
effect.
We know the cause, but we want to identify the effect in experimental research. Right, experimental. But here we don't know the cause, but we know the effect. The recession है, but we don't know the cause. So here we cannot use experimental method because experimental method में क्या है? You need to know the cause, that is independent variable. Right. Then only.
Now example over here which has been happened 2 years ago, that like the entire mountain collapsed on the village and village got disappear. Now we know the effect. So now later on what we can do is we can analyze it and find out what was the cause for it. So that is exposed.
या कहीं पर आग लगती है, तो then again they find out the cause later on.
Oh, yeah.
काफी जगह
इफेक्ट तो पहले ही आया है.
इफेक्ट तो पहले ही आ जाता है, रिसेशन तो आ गया है. So there ex post facto forms of research design, in this see, as I told you, this is experimental and this is ex post facto. To make my point clear, you will now next slide में आपको difference clear हो जाएगा दो slide में. What exactly the difference between experimental and ex post facto research? See, experimental में क्या है? This is experimental research.
Prospective research design is experimental research design. Researcher tries to find out future or potential result. Example, to examine subjects may be asked to smoke under varied conditions which may result cancer. Cause is known. Independent variable, that is effect of excessive smoking, is known.
So this is known in experimental research, but we don't know कि उसकी वजह से cancer होता है. Right? Effect is not known. So that is, so there you can use this method. But now we will see. This is ex post facto research method. This is the method, third method we are talking.
Researcher tries to trace the history to find basic cause. Example, researcher wants to examine the reason behind occurrence of cancer, that is effect.
So this effect is known, but cause is not known. So it could be smoking, heredity, diet, and so on. So there we use ex post facto research. So again, इसमें it's study.
Set to clear.
Yeah, is it clear now?
Yes.
It's clear. So shall we move on to the fourth? Because इसमें काफी सारे और there are there is, I have already told you the difference between experimental and ex post facto, and after that we will stop.
Could have divided into two A and B parts.
Yes. Now within 2 minutes we will wind up. This is field experiments. We will talk about that. What is exactly field experiments? This is very interesting again. Field experiment.
Refer to experiments conducted in real life situation.
Real life situation. In field experiment, this is fourth type of experiment. We have seen survey, case study, ex post facto, and this is field experiment. And prior to that, we also talked about experimental method. Field experiment.
Refer to experiment conducted in real life situation. Here, the control of extraneous factor is not possible as it is natural setting.
Because natural setting mein hai, so you cannot control variables. But this method is used. How? And we will see the usefulness.
Here we take two groups matched for a number of factors such as age, sex, education, socio-economic status, etc. Both these groups are in real life setting and so they are subjected to similar extraneous variables and thus the experimenter can observe the effects of his manipulation on one group and compare with the other group which is not subjected to any intervention.
Example will be, in the example it will be very clear for you what is this exactly.
Example, the researcher wants to study the effect of different methods of teaching. Example, teaching methods, one example is lecture versus tutorial.
So which method is effective, lecture or tutorial? Researcher wants to study. So how researcher will study?
The school is the natural setting from where the researcher randomly selects 100 children from a particular standard, 5th standard के 100 children लिए and randomly assign them two groups. Experimental उसमें से 50 लिए और control group में 50 रखे.
So experimental and control, right? Two groups.
Two experimental group children, the researcher uses the lecture method and to the control group tutorial
method. दोनों को तो then for 1 month they are using that.
Then the effects of the academic performance of these children are compared before and after the introduction of methods of teaching.
So 1 month and the effect will be compared. Which method is more effective?
Conclusion, if there is a difference in the academic performance of children in regard to the two methods of teaching, the experimenter can conclude that particular method of teaching, example tutorial, is more effective than other method lecture.
So that's how
Field experiments are also called as a quasi-experiment as the researchers actively influences something to observe the consequences. When dealing with human subject, it is always possible and advisable to use field experiments or quasi-experiments. This is so because when certain phenomenon and its changes are observed in natural settings, it provides a considerable inputs, information and knowledge about the phenomena in
this
real
last
life.
statement is very important.
If society has to progress this type of a research,
It's important. Okay. Thank you very much.
so one more, just one
Yes.
slide.
Yeah.
If this
Previous?
पीछे
No, next or
पीछे
back. Towards there. You want to explain the difference between qualitative and quantitative research?
No, now see it is important why I want to say that the scientific application and now to conduct the research process these certain codes are coming to the picture and why those ethical codes are coming to the picture. Ethical codes, ethical codes that there are certain systematic things need to be happening while selecting samples. You need to be very careful. But how all these steps and everything came into the picture and when it has came into the picture, American society they have introduced for the first time the guidelines for the research process. That is, there has to be a transparency while conducting research process. While selecting sample, you have to be careful and you need to brief about the entire procedure. You cannot do it in the secret. Okay, it has to be a complete transparent and need to have the consensus of the people and the participant, and they need to like aware what are they going to undergo. At the same time, it is very important the what is the mind if it is certain experimental is going on. So what is the mindset of the person at the beginning of the experiment? It has to be the same at the end of the exit of the experiment. Yeah. Why? Because in the past, like lot of misconducts has happened as far as the research is concerned to explore something, to discover something. In Second World War,
See now,
like After World War
Unethical
II,
issues in research.
Yeah.
Ethical.
after World War, the discovery of Nazi atrocities carried out dangerous and fatal medical experiment by doctors in concentration camps on unwilling prisoners. Now those are concentration camps. Prisoners were prisoners. They didn't have any rights to so during it has been also been observed. Lot of fatal and dangerous experiment has been done. Whether उनका consent है या नहीं है. At that time, it has been reported if somebody wanted to observe what are the fetal changes development if somebody wants to see it. So that time what they have done is they have cut the pregnant women into two pieces to observe what is the stage of the fetus,
और खाना नहीं देने का कितने दिन में आदमी मरता है तो वेरी मतलब काफी ऐसे एक्सपेरिमेंट्स सो देन दिस
one more custody case was very popular in 1932 in US. This has been happened. What has happened? It is the public health services began one research. What they said, they said that on 399 patients, they did one research, and those patients were suffering from syphilis. Okay, and that time penicillin drug was available to to control the symptoms of the syphilis, not curable but control. Okay, now to those 399 patients, those researchers what they said, we are giving you drug or medication, but the truth they did not give, and they wanted objective of the research itself was what? To observe without treatment how long they will survive. So such things has been happened in the past, and that's the reason certain ethical codes have come into the what we have seen in all this right now. Okay.
So informed consent is very important.
Informed consent.
The subject, whoever participant, informed consent. If person wants to leave research at any time, it should be allowed. Yes, all right. Then again, confidentiality is another important factor. No physical or mental harm to the person on whom the experiment is conducted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.